Penn State, I think, is not necessarily in an identity crisis, but as we let off the show, we talked about all these different things that need to find a way to gel together. And basketball and football, along with this too, teams that are going to be built through the transfer portal, that are going to be makeshift squads almost overnight. And that's what Mike Rhoades had to do. Because I've seen people criticizing this team saying, you can't build through the transfer portal. You have to go recruit. Well, what was Mike Rhoades supposed to do when he got here? How much time did he have left to go get play? Micah Shrewsbury took all of his commits with him. Like,
Mhm.
you're lucky that Kanye, Clary, Jameel Brown, and Demetrius Lilly didn't leave. I know Brown and Lilly haven't had the same impact as Clary, but come on, if those three guys left to go to Notre Dame, look what's going on with the Fighting Irish and look what's going on with the Nittany Lions. That's all I'm going to say. A tale of two different programs right now at this point. But I'll say this. I The only way you're going to improve this is by you can't even practice your way out of this, Adam. It is by logging game after game after game because you know what works. You know that playing Leo O'Boyle at the 5 is not ideal, but you're not going to figure that out until you face comparable competition. Sure, you might notice some things at practice, but then you can work on it, you can mask it. It's where you get the real test results, where you go up against teams like Ohio State and it's like, okay, can we get by with this? If we bring him in for his offense, and if he becomes a little bit of a defensive liability, is that going to lose us games or can we get by and win with it? Well, right now, that's the telling point is that you can put O'Boyle in. His offense is greater than his defensive output, and it's not costing us games to this point unnecessarily. At least that's what you're starting to figure out. And then what 5 people do you want to have on the floor at the same time? How many minutes? Because we've seen Raquandis Mitchell, DeMarco Dunn almost get random lots of minutes, right? It'll be 8 minutes one night. It'll be 25 minutes another night. It's almost like riding the hot hand at this point. So I don't know that there's room for improvement because you can't just be identityless. You cannot have an identity, especially in the Big Ten, because they will make you pay for it. So if I'm looking for any room of improvement, it's improve your identity because Penn State basketball could go in a lot of different directions here.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the big. They got to figure out what their identity is and how they want to improve on it. They got to figure out their rotation, as you mentioned. They're kind of throwing a lot of stuff at the wall and seeing what
Everybody.
sticks. And I mean, that's just what they're trying to do. And that they have the ability to do that because they're so deep. I mean, you get it past Dan Collin, Andy Christos, and Bragi Goodmanson, the freshman who came in from Iceland. You get past those three, every guy can come in and really contribute on this team right away for them. I think DeMarco Dunn, you mentioned, has been really interesting. He played 1 minute in the Maryland game, and then he was one of the leading scorers in the Ohio State game. So it's really been riding the hot hand with him, trying to see what he can do. He's from North Carolina, so the talent's definitely there. It's just a matter of him fitting in and gelling with Kanye, Clary, and Ace Baldwin Jr. being off the ball a little bit more. You definitely got to find out what they're going to do at the 5 position. Favor Ire coming back eventually is going to be huge. That's the one thing. They got to get healthy. I mean, you have Jameel Brown, Favor Ire have not seen the full strength of this Penn State team yet this season, so we still got to figure out when that'll come, when there's been no reports on when he will come back. They're hoping. Mike Rhoades said he's not going to wait Favor Ire. He said once he gets healthy, he's going to play. He's not going to hide him. So, I mean, that's just trying to figure that out. I think they got to find a way to shoot the ball better. It's always easy to say. Penn State's strength was not going to be shooting the 3. Leo O'Boyle shot it really well against Ohio State. Zach Hicks has been up and down. Puff Johnson hasn't been able to find his stroke. Obviously, Jameel Brown, who's injured right now, is one of the better shooters on this team. Him coming in and trying to find his stroke as well is going to be huge for this team. But that's something they really got to figure out, how they're going to shoot the ball well, because they're going to be undersized. I mean, they've struggled. Even Kudus Wahab has struggled in the post defensively. Bucknell was able to expose that in the interior. And when you got guys like Zach Edey coming in eventually when they play Purdue and all the great bigs that the Big Ten has to offer, I mean, it's the land of the Giants for a reason. They're going to go down. They're going to try to attack Penn State there, and how they defend that. But the one thing, Mike Rhoades, I think something to add to their identity, they played a lot of zone against Ohio State, and it really worked for them. And I think that's something they're going to have to rely on a lot, because they're not going to be able to match up with all these teams in the Big Ten and be able to stop teams down low. So that zone defense, making these teams shoot, which in the Big Ten, we all know that's been a struggle at times. I mean, Penn State was one of the only teams shooting threes last season, and that's what allowed them to make that run. So being able to play that zone, forcing teams to shoot contested threes, and then rebounding out of that is going to be huge for this team moving forward once they get to conference play, and could really help them against Georgia Tech as well on Saturday.
Not having an identity, though, as we discussed this, Adam, I'm glad you brought up the 3-point shooting, because maybe Penn State doesn't need a full-fledged identity where they put every egg into one basket. And I know a bad coach would try to do that. And Mike Rhoades knows what he has, because for Penn State, is it the fact that they can do a little bit of everything, right? Because a season ago, they had nothing they had little to almost nothing in the front court. I'm sorry. And when it came to shooting, okay, shooting was good because you had Andrew Funk and Seth Lundy and a little bit of Jalen Pickett. But after that, it's like, who do you trust with the basketball? Ace Baldwin can shoot the three. Kanye Clary can shoot the three. DeMarco Dunn can shoot the three. Raquandis Mitchell can shoot the three. Zach Hicks, Puff Johnson. Do you see all the players that I'm naming? I had to go to my second hand. I named 7 players off the top. And then you go to the stat sheet, right? Just because Jameel Brown can shoot the three, but hasn't been available. Leo O'Boyle was 4 of 5 against Ohio State and probably your best sharpshooter on the team. Maybe some of the guys would argue that if they heard that comment, but that's besides the point. But he's your natural, like, he's your guy. He's your 3-point guy. That's what you're going to get. Other guys have a little more they're dynamic in what they can do, because Puff Johnson's not just a 3-point shooter. He can clean up the glass a little bit, play a little bit of better defense. So I want to see him do a better job. But yes, shooting needs to improve just in general. I think any team would love to shoot better, because as we've noticed, the best teams that make it the furthest in March are the best shooting team. Even if they're not the best overall in the season, the ones that do the best they make more shots, right? Their field goal percentage is up. So, but I don't think they're bad at shooting the basketball. And I think that there's a lot of people that they can turn to shoot the basketball. Whereas Penn State, when they went up of opponents, it was no secret that Andrew Funk is going to shoot 10 threes a game. And it was live by Andrew Funk and Seth Lundy or die by those two if they had a cold night. I feel like anybody could heat up on any given night, and Penn State can drop it off into the front court with Wahab, and hopefully when Ray comes back, Penn State can create its own shots, right? Maybe I'd like to see them do a little more of that, because assists are down. Maybe distribute the ball a little better, because I know that Kanye Clary, Ace Baldwin can create their own shots. But maybe I would like to see them distribute the rock a little better. Offense isn't my biggest question mark here. If I had to pick one side of it, it's defense, because you're scoring 76 points per game. You're allowing 71.
Yeah, that's been the big question, because Mike Rhoades came in as a guy who really prided himself on
Slow
defense.
defense, right?
Ace Baldwin Jr. was the defensive player of the year in the A-10 last year. I mean, everyone was thinking defense, and they were bringing Joe Crispin in as an assistant to really take the offensive role and kind of build that offense. Joe's done his job, but the defense just has not meshed. And I think the big thing is, this is huge in all levels of basketball, is 5 guys being locked in together to play team defense, and you need that in the Big Ten, because Penn State does not have guys that are going to go out and just be able to check every guy in the Big Ten and be able to guard them one-on-one and get stops every time down the floor. You need to be able to have 5 guys together playing defense and seeing what you can do there with that. And I think that's the big thing with chemistry. They haven't played a lot of games together, so you don't understand, like, one guy forcing one guy just to step outside of help and then they give up something on the back end. They're also trying to play a full court pressure defense, which in the A-10 that works. When you play against some of the bigger teams with better guards, it's going to struggle at times, and they're trying to really fix that mold. But I think that's the big thing with defense. It goes back to the chemistry thing we keep saying. It's these guys just got to play more games together, and they haven't been healthy. We haven't seen a full Penn State team, but the defense has to get better. I don't know if Penn State's going to be able to get in a shootout in every game in the Big Ten and be able to come out of it on the other end more times than not winning those games. They're going to have to be able to get stops, especially down the stretch. Now, eventually you get down 18, your defense was able to get the stops you needed against Ohio State to get back and win that game. You still gave up 80 points, but you gave up 55 early and was able to really get that game back to where you were able to come back and win it. But that's going to be the big question. Can the defense hold up their end? Because right now, their best offense is getting to the basket with Kanye Clary and Ace Baldwin attacking, then looking either to kick or score. And they just got to continue to do that offensively. But defensively, they have to find their identity. And I think that zone I mentioned earlier could be something that's added to this effect, along with that pressure defense when trying to speed up opponents.
And rebounding. I think rebounding is an obvious one. Well, and that's something that Penn State wasn't good at last season, but they were efficient. I feel like last year's team was a little more efficient, because you had Jalen Pickett. I'm not saying is a once in a lifetime player, but the way that he was able to create, the way that he was able to get defenses to flow towards him, Kanye Clary is starting to become that. And I think that, am I comparing him directly to Jalen Pickett? No, but what I'm saying is, he's starting to gain the respect of defenses, where that is what would happen to Ace Baldwin. And now Penn State basically has Jalen Pickett split into two. You have good qualities from Ace Baldwin and you have good qualities from Kanye Clary. If you put them together, you'd probably get something close to Jalen Pickett. But I really, outside of getting Ray back and just being maybe a little more, I don't know how you become more aggressive on the glass, right? That's it. It's really, you just have to do it. Like there's nothing you can scheme or blueprint. Maybe the zone will help out because you'll have more bodies around the paint if you decide to run some more 2-3, if that's what helps. But getting another 6'11" player back, a former top 100 recruit out of high school, certainly is going to help in that category. I think Puff Johnson, I thought we'd see a little more out of him, but I know that he was banged up going into this season. So I won't be as critical.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be the big thing. It's just finding they need 5 guys to rebound. They don't have like
Yeah.
2 years ago when Micah Shrewsbury was in his first year, he had John Harrow who's just gonna go get every rebound, and that's how it
Yep.
worked.
And that's
Last year,
Wahab so far.
yeah, and that's been what Wahhab's had to be so far. And it's
Mhm.
just, they got to do kind of what last year's team did. They were a little better. I mean, Jalen Pickett was a 6'4" guard, so he's obviously going to be able to
Yep.
rebound a lot better than Penn State. Kanye and Ace do not have that size that Jalen Pickett had on the rebounding side of the basketball. Seth Lundy was a great rebounder for them last year. Miles Dredd could rebound for him when he came in as well. So they had a lot of guys who could go in and get rebounds when they needed to get rebounds and battle on the glass, and they just fight for it. This Penn State team, they haven't been able to figure that out yet, but I think that's something when rebounding. I mean, rebounding's a lot about heart and just trying to go get the ball. And I think that's something.
Exactly.
I'm not saying Penn State doesn't have heart, but that's something that I think Coach Rhoades look at, say it's fixable. Box out, go get the rebound. That's just something we have to clean up. But that's something that's definitely fixable. It's not something Penn's going to say, well, we're going to get out rebounded by 15 every night and just have to pray we are able to overcome that. But I think it's definitely something that's going to work because everyone knows in the Big Ten, everyone's going to the glass trying to get second chance opportunities. So that's something I'm sure Mike Rhoades is going to be very critical on in these final non-conference games, trying to fix before they travel to Michigan State and reopen conference play on January 4th.
Yeah, and Penn State was out rebounded last season a good amount of the time. So don't think that it's because they can't rebound, they're never going to win a game going up against Purdue or anyone else. No, that's not the case. Yes, they did lose those games to Purdue. I understand that, but it didn't seem to be a problem against Illinois. It hasn't seemed to be a problem against Ohio State over the past 5 years. I feel like Penn State has had Ohio State's number, whether it's Pat Chambers, Micah Shrewsbury, or now Mike Rhoades, coincidentally enough.